Hey, so if you remember last year, I posted a video uh, called I Still Consider Myself a Libertarian. And this was about how I consider myself a libertarian still, even though I embrace more ethnological practices. I believe in social cohesion. Uh, and I have to believe in that because it's a necessity for a peaceful society. It's literally a prerequisite. So last year, I wrote a paper um, that sought to create a new ethnos, or at least set up the foundations for a new ethnos, using as minimal force as possible. And I succeeded in that. The paper came out to be 4,970 words. So it's fairly long. It's not too long, though. That paper will be linked in the description. So in this paper, I have 6 sections, including the preface and the conclusion. The preface goes over 3 points that need to be understood before you read the paper. Those points are, I believe in science, I believe in pragmatism, and I believe in libertarianism. And it discusses the limitations on those and the depths of those as well. The next section is called The Dawn of Civilization, and this goes over. Actually, I have critiques of The Chalice and the Blade by Riane Eisler, and I post some of those critiques in that section. However, I also sought to prove her claims true, in a way. The time period that she chose was not accurate for the type of civilization she described. This is actually pre-agricultural, and I describe the psychological differences between pre-agricultural and post-agricultural man in that section. The next section was about the Greeks, and I go over the book that actually inspired the writing of this paper, because it wasn't that video that inspired the writing of this paper, it was a book, and it was one of the books that I read last year, and that book was The Ancient Ethnostate, which was about the Greeks, and so that book actually inspired the writing of the paper. So I go over the Greeks, and I go over consciousness, and how I believe. I also cite Julian Jaynes, the breakdown of consciousness in the or the origin of consciousness in the breakdown of the bicameral mind, by Julian Jaynes, and I critique Julian Jaynes. Basically, I agree with the effect that Julian Jaynes describes, but I disagree with the cause, and I explain why I disagree with the cause, and what I believe the cause actually is. Then I describe the actual practices that the Greeks put into maintaining their ethnos. And, yeah, that's a good section. Good long section, too. The next section, if I recall correctly, was it was a useful practice, which was inspired by Biohistory by Jim Penman, and it goes over how to encourage vigor, societal vigor, so as to prevent collapse and encourage maintenance of civilization as opposed to constant progression. Also, I encourage constant progression, but you do need something to counterbalance that. The next section is about spirituality, and in that I discuss Christianity and Catholicism and my some of my critiques, not all of my critiques of Christianity and Catholicism, but then I discuss paganism and specifically Hinduism, and I describe how Hinduism is not Faustian in the Spenglerian sense. If you've read Oswald Spengler, he talks about Faustianism, which is religion that serves to worship man as opposed to worshiping the divine. So I do explain that. But in this section, I actually go over the a theory of consciousness that ties in with shamanism, because shamanism is the most primitive form of spirituality, and therefore the most instinctual. And this paper is about instinct, after all. So, and I tie in multiple things together in that section. And the last section is the conclusion, and this really just says, this really just ties everything up in a neat little bow. I mentioned Roger Penrose, or Roger Scruton, not Roger Penrose. Roger Scruton, and I actually have critiques of Roger Scruton as well. Roger Scruton is a conservative philosopher. I have critiques of him, but I reference him. His ideas are good, although they may be contradictory and internally inconsistent. So, one thing that you will notice in this paper is that I did not cover race at all. And that's because race doesn't have anything to do with an actual ethnos. You can have an ethnos without racial homogeneity, and it doesn't require it. All that requires is cultural and social homogeneity. So, please check out that paper. I am working on a follow-up to that paper. So, that should be pretty good. And I also have a couple other papers I have ideas for, but I haven't started working on yet. But also let me know what you think about that paper. You can leave a comment in the description. You can contact me on my Twitter, which is linked in the paper, by the way. It's linked at the end. So yeah, thank you for watching. Peace.